Okay, so thank you very much for everybody who's still here, waiting for new ideas to be shared in this panel. This is entitled Participation in Practice, Public Space, Data and Empowerment. And the idea of this panel, considering the wonderful speakers and panelists that are joining this afternoon here, is to reflect on how this idea that we have been discussing all the day long about how technology is power, how technology can enable new forms of power, like new forms of collective intelligence, new forms of deliberation. At the same time, technology can help to deploy like new forms of oppression, new forms of surveillance. So in the end, design matters. The way we design technology is going to matter in terms of how power is going to be exercised, and at the same time, how power and counter-power is going to be exercised. So we have been focusing on experiences connected to the Digidem, and this project is inspired by other many experiences across the world, and this was the main idea, like to reflect on these experiences that we can learn from, different cases of study, best practices, some failures, and for doing so, I think we are quite lucky in this edition of the Digidem Fest for having such great panelists as Paula Forteza, who is a member of the National Assembly of France and a civic tech enthusiast. We also have Yun-Chen, which is nobody in Ghotbi, which is a quite interesting concept that maybe she will explain during her presentation. On my right, we have Noel Hidalgo and Nicholson, the executive director and social innovation designer at Beta New York, and also Sanna Ghotbi, who is a citizen participation consultant in Digidem Lab. So we are going to start this panel by some presentations by each member here, and we are going to make one question per talk. So in that case, we can start then a final round of debate with a lot of questions and hopefully a lot of answers about what was presented here. So our first speaker will be Paula, who will be talking about un espacio público digital para la participación ciudadana, el caso del Parlamento francés. So, merci beaucoup.
Esto es para... Ok, perfecto. Bueno, yo soy Paula Forteza, soy diputada en Francia. Represento a los franceses que viven en América Latina y en el Caribe. Vengo de Argentina, por eso el acento porteño. Y les quería presentar hoy algunas de las enseñanzas que pude recoger durante los últimos años trabajando sobre Civic Tech, trabajando sobre participación ciudadana, trabajando sobre transparencia de la administración y de los responsables políticos. Tengo dos, digamos, grandes convicciones que quiero compartir con ustedes y tres ejemplos que reflejan un poco esas convicciones y que las ponen en práctica. Mi primer gran convicción es que tenemos que construir espacios públicos y comunes digitales. Digidem es un ejemplo de estos espacios públicos digitales. Cada vez que vimos que una reivindicación política tuvo un impacto, fue escuchada, fue porque los ciudadanos se reunían en el espacio público, es decir, en plazas. Lo hemos visto, por ejemplo, en Nuit Debout en Francia, lo hemos visto en Los Indignados, lo hemos visto en Hong Kong, hoy en Chile todavía. Bueno, podríamos dar ejemplos durante toda la tarde, pero es muy importante este espacio donde la gente puede interactuar de igual a igual y donde pueden argumentar un poco a la democracia deliberativa de Habermas o como en las ágoras de Atenas. Realmente es ese espacio que es interesante. Y este espacio hoy en día no lo tenemos a nivel digital porque la participación se desarrolla mucho más en las redes sociales, en Twitter, en Facebook, y vemos que tenemos un Internet realmente que está colonizado por intereses privados, colonizado por grandes empresas, que tienen una lógica completamente diferente y que no permiten a esa democracia deliberativa de asentarse. Es decir, que en las redes sociales no tenemos ninguna transparencia sobre los algoritmos, no entendemos por qué alguna información es, digamos, protagonista, por qué, cómo la información se viraliza, cómo las fake news se repanden. Y todo esto está muy ligado a la economía de la atención, es decir, que estas empresas, que son empresas privadas, tienen como interés, digamos, de recaudar recursos, y todo esto está ligado, digamos, a la publicidad que pueden vender, y entonces su interés es de maximizar el tiempo de atención de la gente en los contenidos, y es decir, que los contenidos más polarizados van a difundirse, van a, digamos, ser más compartidos, y la calidad de la información no es el criterio que va a prevalecer. Entonces es muy importante que podamos todos trabajar, y creo que estamos todos hoy acá convencidos sobre estos comunes digitales. Digidem forma parte de ellos, porque como sabemos está desarrollado en open source, es muy respetuoso del GDPR, de los datos personales de los usuarios, y permite la trazabilidad de las decisiones, tiene funcionalidades que realmente permiten este diálogo de igual a igual, esta argumentación y esta deliberación. Esa es mi primera convicción. Mi segunda convicción: yo trabajé en Civic Tech desde hace mucho tiempo, y al principio me concentraba mucho más en las herramientas digitales. Había trabajado, por ejemplo, en un proyecto que se llamaba OGP Toolbox, que era un catálogo de Civic Techs y de herramientas digitales para permitir la participación ciudadana. Pero muy rápido, entrando en política, me di cuenta que no es suficiente. Es decir, que hay que ir más allá de digamos, una visión más ligada al solucionismo tecnológico, y hay que pensar más en todo el proceso en el cual está integrada esta herramienta. O sea, lo que vemos es que necesitamos institucionalizar estas iniciativas que vengan tanto de la sociedad civil como de los gobiernos o de la administración. Cuando las iniciativas ligadas a la Civic Tech vienen de la sociedad civil y no encuentran, digamos, un proceso decisorio que ya está establecido, las reivindicaciones no tienen impacto. Y al revés, cuando tenemos, por ejemplo, iniciativas mismo del gobierno más bottom-down, que tampoco están integradas a un proceso decisorio existente, termina siendo solo un acto de comunicación, las personas no entienden el impacto de su contribución sobre la decisión política, terminan siendo estando frustradas, y termina siendo contraproductivo, porque la gente cree cada vez menos, digamos, en este tipo de iniciativas participativas. Entonces, dos convicciones: que hay que crear espacios públicos y comunes digitales, y que hay que institucionalizar, digamos, todas las iniciativas ligadas a las Civic Techs. Entonces, les voy a dar tres ejemplos para ilustrar. Nosotros creamos en la Asamblea Nacional un espacio que llamamos la oficina abierta, el Bureau Ouvert, y que es digamos, un encuentro todos los viernes en mi oficina, donde cualquier persona puede venir, ciudadanos curiosos, Civic Techs, Data Scientists, y trabajamos sobre herramientas en común para crear más participación, para crear transparencia. Por ejemplo, creamos herramientas para poner mi agenda online, para ser completamente transparente sobre los gastos de mi equipo. Bueno, toda una serie de proyectos, y el que les quería comentar hoy, bueno, ahí vemos los Parlement Ouvert, es el de las preguntas ciudadanas. Entonces, esto muestra bien cómo integramos una herramienta Civic Tech a un proceso decisorio que es constitucional, que tiene, digamos, una legitimidad constitucional, porque los diputados en Francia tienen la posibilidad de formular preguntas al gobierno, y el gobierno está obligado a responder. Estas preguntas son formuladas por escrito y nosotros lo que pensamos es cómo podemos dar esta oportunidad también a los ciudadanos, cómo podemos crowdsourcear esas preguntas para después redirigirlas al gobierno y tener obligatoriamente una respuesta. Entonces, utilizamos primero una plataforma que está desarrollada en Islandia, también open source, y hoy mismo estamos, para la ocasión del Digidem Day, lanzando nuestra segunda versión del sitio que está en Digidem. Entonces basculamos todo el proceso sobre Digidem y la verdad que está funcionando muy bien. Ya tuvimos 1000 preguntas de ciudadanos, tenemos 40 diputados que participan de esta iniciativa, entonces que van a ver cuáles son las preguntas con las que se sienten más a gusto y las preguntan, y realmente tenemos respuestas del gobierno, así que es una experiencia muy interesante. Un segundo ejemplo, tenemos hoy en día la campaña para las elecciones municipales en Francia, y estoy trabajando con un candidato para las elecciones en París, y también decidimos utilizar Digidem, pero esta vez para hacer un sorteo de ciudadanos para que integren las listas. Entonces vamos a tener en cada uno de los distritos listas donde va a haber una parte de los candidatos que sean ciudadanos que han sido sorteados sobre Digidem. Y esto es muy interesante porque Digidem tiene una cantidad enorme de funcionalidades, pero no siempre son las más interesantes que son utilizadas. A veces usamos Digidem solo para hacer una consultación o para simplemente hacer emerger ideas, pero esta funcionalidad del sorteo está muy bien, digamos, armada, porque realmente tenemos una trazabilidad de todo el dispositivo con las fórmulas matemáticas que están muy bien explicadas, con la posibilidad, digamos, de combinar el sorteo sobre el software con un sorteo con un dado físicamente. Entonces todo el dispositivo está hecho para que haya una confianza absoluta en la iniciativa. Y esto gustó mucho, la verdad que hubo una cobertura mediática muy importante y ya tenemos preguntas, mismo sin haberlo lanzado, lanzamos la plataforma el lunes, ya tenemos preguntas de otras grandes ciudades de Francia que están interesadas, nos contactaron de Toulouse, de Montpellier, de Marseille, para entender cómo estamos construyendo esto. Un tercer ejemplo es el ligado a la Convención Ciudadana por el Clima. Esto es una iniciativa que lanzó el gobierno francés en respuesta a la crisis de las chaquetas amarillas. Es una crisis que se había lanzado luego a un aumento del precio de la gasolina ligado a un impuesto ecológico que había querido instalar el gobierno. Y durante toda la crisis, después hubo un gran debate, los ciudadanos pedían de ir más rápido y más lejos en términos de transición ecológica. Y entonces una de las ideas que salió de todo este proceso de deliberación ciudadana fue de crear esta convención ciudadana con 100 ciudadanos sorteados que puedan durante varios meses intercambiar con expertos, con periodistas, con investigadores, trabajar entre ellos animados por expertos de la participación ciudadana para llegar a un texto de ley que vaya directamente a la Asamblea Nacional o a referéndum. Entonces esto es una primera para Francia, es realmente algo bastante ambicioso en términos institucionales, y vemos acá también que hay una plataforma que se lanzó para recoger ideas de los ciudadanos que vengan a alimentar las discusiones y las reflexiones de los ciudadanos de la Asamblea, y esto también se armó sobre Digidem. Así que ahí están 3 ejemplos donde vemos que tenemos una solución tecnológica que responde a la creación de un espacio público online, de un común online, y que al mismo tiempo institucionaliza la iniciativa porque estamos al más alto nivel político con, digamos, un marco decisorio y un impacto político que responde a reglas institucionales, reglas constitucionales. Entonces, los ciudadanos, cuando integran, digamos, la iniciativa, saben exactamente a qué va a servir digamos, su contribución, el tiempo que pasan y la energía que ponen en esta iniciativa. Bueno, ahí está mi presentación y si tienen preguntas, estoy disponible.
Sí. Existe también otra plataforma que se llama Parlement et Citoyen. ¿Cuál es la relación con esta plataforma? Y también para el sorteo, ¿cómo funciona el sorteo? ¿Esto con un database de todos los electores franceses o voluntarios
Sí.
y tal?
Parlement et Citoyen usa una solución propietaria. Entonces nosotros elegimos en general no trabajar con ellos. Es una solución que se llama Cap Collectif. Y entonces es realmente otra visión, es una lógica atrás de startup, más de realmente tener un business model ligado a las iniciativas, a vender proyectos a los gobiernos, etc. Así que nosotros en general no trabajamos con ellos. Sobre la segunda pregunta, no es... Como es una iniciativa política, no podemos obligar a alguien a integrar una lista de un candidato. Entonces el sorteo no es sobre todos los ciudadanos, sino sobre gente que se propone o que candidatea. Y entonces por eso también hicimos un gran trabajo con Virgil, acá presente, de arquitectura del sitio, porque necesitamos tener candidaturas, pero al mismo tiempo asegurarnos que cada uno candidatea solo una vez, que son personas que viven en París, que responden a los criterios de elegibilidad para ser candidatos, y queremos también que digamos, se comprometan a ciertos valores de no discriminación, no agresión, etc. Entonces tuvimos que torcer un poco Digidem para asegurarnos todo esto. Por ejemplo, la gente tiene que poner fotos de su documento de identidad, que gracias a Digidem de todos modos son suprimidos al minuto, al instante, después de que hay una verificación, o sea, no se guardan en base, etcétera, o sea, todo muy protector de los datos personales, pero tuvimos que armar como una mini identidad digital para asegurarnos que no hay trolls, que no hay bots, que no hay personas que candidatean varias veces, etc.
So thank you very much, Paula. If you have more questions to Paula, then you can formulate them in the final debate. So our next speaker will be Yun-Chen, who is, as I presented before, nobody in Ghotbi 1, Ghotbi 0, and she's going to present how we failed to make the online deliberation tool experiences from sense.Taiwan.
Which one? Okay. Okay. So hi, I'm Yun-Chen. I'm from Taiwan, a community called gov0.tw, which means G0v.tw. And today I'm not going to introduce our community, but introduce one of the product we made under this community structure and as a government project, and we actually failed as, not as successful as Digidem. So I wish I can share my experience and I can get people's feedback or to see other ways to develop a tool. So the slides is under CC Creative Commons license. And usually if I do speech, you can go there to ask me questions, but this time we take real outside questions. So the project name is sense.tw. It's an issue policy mapping tool. We wanted to, with this domain name, you can have make sense.tw and nonsense.tw. Just, domain name is important. And me, I was a former product manager of sense.tw. The project is already closed because the government no longer sponsor for this project. And I got 0 participants, but I don't represent Gov0. We are the distributed community, so this is a claim. And just a very little introduction of Gov0. We are the civic community that nobody can represent anyone. And we have a motto called, don't ask why nobody is doing this. You are the nobody. So why nobody, use dissemin in Taiwan? Then you are the nobody, you bring dissemin to Taiwan. So that's our motto. And we have stickers for scales. So we have journalists, designer, developers to join. And I bring many stickers here. So if you're interested in your stickers, you can find me. So Gov0 community is a community that we default open, decentralized, everybody can contribute. So that's just a background story. And I jump to, so we have hackathon too. So in this community, one day, my boss said that, hey, did you want to join my team to build an online deliberation tool that's, for people can really discuss about technology policy. For example, like, do we want to have a nuclear power plant? Or where should the government put their fundings into artificial intelligence? Which sector? Those, advanced technology policy. So I said, okay, cool, I'm going to join. I'm going to be a product manager. But the end result was actually I have to do more than a tool. Like, my tool is very bad. We only have 120 users. And I have write an online participation guideline, and I even host the technology policy meetup. And also, we use manually to collect online open source community comments, like in Telegram group or Facebook group, so that we can give the government what they want. So, from online collaboration tool, deliberation tool to, we do 5 things, and it's not successful at all. I want to share our journey. And so first we organize as a startup team. We have, I think, 7 of us. So we want to build a product. We are not just want to do another website for the government. And we run Scrum, Agile development. So we also have some conflicts with the government checkpoints culture that they don't understand what is Agile mean. So that means we need to fit a lot of their expectation without not with our working culture. And so first, I think for me, I don't know if anyone work with collaboration with government. I work in civil society side, so I spend fairly much time to understand the stakeholders, like who is the boss of your project and what the other stakeholders' expectation. Like they saw your team is IT guy. You need to help us build a Facebook fan page, help us build a website, and help us build a server. Or why can't you build an app and a website and a tool at the same time? So we need to talk a lot on this one. It takes me a few months. And also the government changed their goals at all. At first they are going to have a national assembly, but they don't going to do that anymore. So we have to fit their changing demands. And this is our endpoint. So my team wants to build an online tool with offline meetup so that the community can, when I say community, for example, like we have community in data science or artificial intelligence or blockchain, so they can organize their thought and submit to the government. That's the endpoint, and they never achieve, but it looks good on PowerPoint. So what the government say they want is that they want a bottom-up discussion, but actually they don't care if it's bottom-up or not. They want to have organized external insight, because at first there are companies selling a lot of data, say, hey, I can tell you what is hot on Facebook and what is hot on Twitter, but to them it's not valuable, because you just like, oh, artificial intelligence go up like 500% or something. So what does that mean for our policy? So we try to get them the organized external insight, but they don't care about we are building a tool. So then we start to map what are the existing mechanisms and where are the gaps in Taiwan. So I go very quick here. If you have questions, I can talk more about this. So in Taiwan right now, we already have join.tw. It's a platform like We People. So you can go on and sign petition. And after 5,000 petition, some of the projects are going to Audrey, our digital minister, Audrey Tang's Participation Officer Network. And there they will organize, they will analyze the stakeholders' need and response to the people. And some of you may heard of P-Taiwan, but P-Taiwan is only very specific in digital regulation, like Airbnb, blockchain, drone. We cannot use P-Taiwan to discuss like do we want to reduce the college tuition? It's not in the P-Taiwan scope. And also in Taiwan, we have some frequent, only 4 years a time, like energy white paper, national judicial reform. So, okay. So we don't want to repeat this platform. They are working quite well. So we want to dip deeper, that we want to have a better quality of discussion. Because like right now on join.tw, the Participation Officer Network, they already use the online post-it to break down the policies, to see the arguments. And also Taiwan using polls to survey people's opinions, and they grouped it by algorithm. And like Taiwan process use all these tools to have an online and offline meeting. So we have already a lot of tools in Taiwan. So we focus on expert meeting, and we want to have a deeper and informed discussion. We want a discussion based on reference. As the technology community, we want to say that you say like this product is going to increase the risk of getting cancer. So where's your reference, right? So we did something. We used the hypothesis. It's an open source project. You can annotate it. And so you just annotate some part, and then you have a comment on the right side. So at first, because in Taiwan, some of the community members, when we go to government meeting, we will open a document and ask people for comments, so that we are not only present ourselves, but we also bring other community members' opinion into the government meeting. But no one wants to use it, because actually the government already released the meeting document 3 days before the meeting. So you actually don't have quite time to do that. And also the technology expert meeting is very highly professional. So you probably just one of the 3 people can answer this question in the country. You don't need others' opinion. So no one used it. And we also debate on does the tool only serve for the government use, because we focus so much on document. So we try to re-identify the challenge to generate community discussion. We realize we want to bring like blockchain community, talk about like how like Taiwan can develop blockchain. So we do a lot of UX research, like try to make the flow is in Chinese, but I don't know how to translate it. We made a lot of tools, and we define our question as how to organize an input technology community, constructive insights in early policy making process. I know it's very long and it's quite vague, so that's probably when you make a product, you need to have a statement more clear. So the things we realize is that the government work on hierarchy. So they think they're saying, oh, this thing is Ministry of Education, that is Ministry of Economy, that is Ministry of Technology. But when we community see the AI policy of the government, it's all in one. So we want to make a platform that you can collect the problem, argument, reference, solution together. And so I think this is also another mistake that we made. So first, this tool at the beginning, no one used it. And then we want to add features on this, so actually it makes it more complicated, and no one used it too. So so you have the annotation, and then we put your annotation into a node so that you can connect the documents from Ministry of Education and Ministry of Economics on the AI talents, and you link them together. So every card here you can actually click and go back to the original page. It's an exciting idea. But so you can like this, you can add tags or something. But still, no one used it because it's very hard to understand. When we show people like this, they say, where should I start to look at it? And also, it's hard to operate. Our user experience is not very good. We want to add so many features, so user experience very bad. So I think that's probably work for people is that we realize we need to create the user case ourselves because no one in Taiwan existing technology, like maybe only Audrey Tang's office is using high tech like the post and stuff. So we need to create a scenario ourselves. So for example, we use our tool to organize all Gov0 projects. So you can link back to those Gov0 projects on the map. And also we build up a discussion structure that really focus on definition, problem, solution, and also stakeholders. So for example, we start to host a technology meetup that using our tool at real time. I think it's here. So people discuss here and someone is mapping their discussion and other people at that room can put the reference links on the map as well. So so this is net neutrality. We also discuss blockchain governance. And this one is nuclear power plant debate. So it was actually a live streaming debate and some people doing the transcript. So we do on the transcript that we try to fact check the transcript when they mention some numbers. We go back to original report. So we started to create a use case. So some people start to use it, and usually young people, like very young, and more people can understand it. But we are out of our time, and we need to close the project because it's a government project. So we spent 2 months writing the research paper and the final report to the government, which means our project development is totally stopped. And we try as much as possible to leave the documentation. But the documentation are mostly in Chinese, so that also makes it hard to be forwarded to other countries. So lesson learned is that this timeline is quite messy because the left is the timeline the government thinks. They think the project start at October, but we only got the funding on January. So our timeline is so different their timeline. And to fit their goals, we actually have, as a product manager and my boss, we have to do a lot of extra things outside of the tool development. So, and also expectation is different. The government wants to have a pipeline. So we can have a SOP so that we can collect people's feedback through this pipeline. But we actually want to help people to pull a Lego together, to construct their own idea, and that takes time. But the government really, because the election is coming and they are losing, so they really need instant feedback. So if I can do that again for the last year project, first I will ask my boss that, do you think the tool is what we have to do to accomplish this project? Maybe at the very beginning, organize a team, focus on tool is not good. And also because we are outsider, we are not inside the government, it's really hard for us to push the government officers to use. And on tool development, I think we too ambitious. We add too many features, so I want to have a smaller MVP and more iteration on user testing. We spend too much time on user experience interview, but which doesn't lead to the real, like, the working things. So yeah, and also we need to create and promote a new use case, especially in the CiviTech case, because no one have used this kind of tool before. So yeah, okay, what we've left, so the server is closed, now there's a static page, and our team is dismissed. I think at least we have some documents on how the government saying or tell the government what this online community or open source communities means. And we try to leave every document open source in case that anyone in the future in Taiwan wants to build the same thing. So, okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Oh.
All right, and I'm going to set this for 7 minutes because Kate and I are splitting this.
Siri.
Hey Siri, How many of you are comfortable with me speaking quickly in English? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you are not comfortable with me speaking quickly in English? Raise your hand. Great. I can speak quickly then. All right. So if you want a copy of our slides, you can access them here from this bit.ly URL. We have many speaker notes that are available that help unpack and talk about the subject that's at hand. I'm Noel Hidalgo, or Noel Hidalgo. I grew up in Ohio, so unfortunately my Spanish is not so good. I now live in Brooklyn, and I unprofessionally tweet at NoNec, but professionally tweet at Beta NYC. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of where our organization comes from. In 1993, through a series of legal events, New York City's, well actually 1989, New York City's charter, which is the city's constitution, was found unconstitutional. And so for many years, they went through a process to rewrite the city charter. As part of that, an office was created called the Office of the Public Advocate. And the Public Advocate is a citywide elected position whose sole focus is to think about how to best be a public advocate. As part of that position, a commission was created called the Commission on Public Information and Communication. And as one of their first initiatives was to catalog and organize the city's databases. So every single agency had to go through and report what database, what application it was using, and put it here into this lovely phone book as that we can see. So we would get agency, we would get what was the application name, the year that it was activated, the application description, and the database contents. At the forward of the book was a very elaborate description on how to get access to these databases. It described very specifically how to write a Freedom of Information request. This was published in April of 1993 and was never to be published again. So community advocates, of course, say thank you for that first inspiring effort. The woman here to the far left with the beautiful shawl is named Gail Brewer, who is one of our deepest friends and allies in this movement, was part of that team that helped rewrite the city charter. When she was punished, mind you, to take over the technology committee in city council, she saw what was going on in Washington with the Obama administration and said, I too want to have an open data law in New York City. And so for 2 years, advocates worked in solidarity to figure out how to get a piece of legislation through city council that was going to be transformative, that it would be the very first piece of legislation passed by a city council forcing the administration to open its books like it had done in 1993. And on March 7, 2012, the city council passed that piece of legislation, and we now have the city's open data law, Local Law 11 of 2012. We have subsequently, with Beta NYC and through our other advocates, and as well as Gail, we've worked year by year as users to essentially improve and strengthen that piece of legislation. And so as we have come about, and we started off as a meetup and are now a nonprofit, we've worked methodically to build trust across this broad ecosystem, whether it's with friends inside of government, whether it's friends outside of government, good government groups, other meetups, other startups. We needed to build trust because that is the best way to hack a system. And so our mission is that we're a civic organization dedicated to improving all lives in New York through technology, data, and design. When we look at our city's history, we have to acknowledge the injustices that have existed. The Lenape people, who are one of the indigenous populations on the beautiful set of islands that we now call New York, that we still take their name for. Mannahatta is actually Manhattan, the island of many hills. The Lenape people had a belief that the Dutch colonists didn't quite understand. And it was really confusing for them because the Lenape said, we don't own the air, we don't own the water, how can you own the land? And so to them, all of the trade that they engaged in with the Dutch colonizers was actually part of the commons. that way they were there to essentially enjoy the commons as all the other tribes in the New York City area had been enjoying them for hundreds of years. Sadly, we don't have as many Lenape and other indigenous tribes today to tell their story, and so we bring this into the core of our work because we too believe in the commons. Another part of our history is the fact that there was walls surrounding our city, just like here in Barcelona, and we tore them down for the purpose of commerce and collaboration. And so as part of our work, we fundamentally believe in a borderless society that doesn't have walls because we're working in solidarity, not silos, to build a better commons. As part of our genesis, we ended up coalescing the community through a number of different meetups, because that's what we were back in the day. And so we ended up writing this People's Manifesto, our community manifesto, that articulates our mission, vision, values, as well as 34 different proposals. We were then able to take those ideas and turn them into legislation, or at least proposed legislation. We've been able to get 10 new pieces of law passed. We were able to amend our charter last year, and then we've been able to create a lot of public-private partnerships. I'm going to skip to, these are our core values: the freedom to connect, the freedom to learn, the freedom to innovate, and the freedom to collaborate. And as we've gone on this open data journey, we recognize that open data is a powerful tool only if it is used by everyone. So today we're going to talk about 3 key communities that we've worked with, that we identified, that we wanted to empower to help make this open data for all. Those 3 communities are the New York City Community Board staff and their members, civic hackers and university students, and ultimately New York City's public schools and their teachers. So community boards. This is a really fun part of New York City government. At least I think so. So New York City government is this massive, massive government. It's the 4th largest government in the United States. It has $95 billion most recently, and we have at least 4 big city elected positions: the mayor, the public advocate, the comptroller, and I've got to hurry up now, the borough presidents and district attorney. We have 35 city council members and 59 community boards. So we have over 50 different mayoral agencies, how the city administers its services, and there's this thing called the community board, which helps oversee how those agencies deliver services to 150,000 people, right? So it's essentially New York City government decentralized. There are 50 appointed volunteers and 3 staff members. And every single week, they're having community meetings to talk about community-based issues. New Yorkers as young as 16 can be on a community board, and these things kind of work their way up to legislation. Their 3 key responsibilities are urban planning, participatory budgeting, licensing, and permits. So for us to do work in that community, we really needed to understand how they operated and what were their pain points. So we did a couple of anthropological and ethnographic reports where we hired PhDs to go in and interview and say, hey, how do we figure out how you work so that way we can find your pain points and possibly build tools or build systems around that. So we have a technology needs report, and then we have a data design and challenges report, and then ultimately that has helped inform our classes. I'll skip this one so we can get to our classes. Our classes really focus on 4 key areas, which is first, we need to break down the systems of language that we're using, because we're using a lot of technical jargon, and we need to figure out how to transmit that information to you. Second to that is that we want you to use that data and information in decision-making processes, so we want you to take action off of these dashboards. Then, once we've kind of got you to that particular level, we're going to level you up and start teaching you the open data portal and tools like R and open source GIS mapping software. And then our 4th big activity is like, okay, you've climbed the ladder, now figure out how to take that exact same curriculum and spread it down to the person that next to you. So we have a whole Train the Trainer program that is now used in our Queens Public Library, which is a derivative of the work that we've done in New York. As I said, our audience has been 59 community boards. we're actually approaching the 2 other library systems, because New York is so big, it has 3 library systems. We've hit up community boards, city council members, community activists. We're now working to educate students. Our pedagogical foundations are, one is that our classes are physically interactive, so we get people out of their chairs and moving around the room to talk about spreadsheets and to perform data functions. They're digitally interactive as well, so we link them to real-world problems that these people are then going to go home and research. They're all open-sourced. So we love to teach the 5 key terms: sort, filter, group, count, and pivot. We use these terms over and over and over and over and over again. And we end up teaching tools that we've also produced that are open source, but my time is running out, and I need to hand this off to Kate. So please welcome Kate Nicholson from Beta NYC. This little thing right here is forward.
Cool. Hi, I'm Kate. I have one name, it's Kate, and my last name is Nicholson. And that's where I tweet. I'm from New York and live there currently now as well. Wrong way. So Noel was talking about how we engage different communities in open data, and he went over the community boards. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we empower civic hackers and university students in our open data, and then how we also engage the New York City public school system and their CS for All program. So to start, we run a innovation fellowship program. Gonna get this. We have a civic innovation fellowship program that we developed 6 years ago, and it is a program that brings on around 12 different students from the CUNY schools, which are across New York City. They're public university. It's New York City's public university system. They come into our office for 2 semesters and essentially develop civic analyst skills. So they get a taste of what technology has to do with civics and how they can contribute to their city. So they begin with a semester of learning. So right now we have a new cohort of students who are currently going through different lectures with our colleague Emily and doing some applied learning. They're learning how to map, for instance, their community boards across the city, and they're investigating how diverse the community boards are and whether or not they're representative of their communities. They are they're working inside of the Manhattan Borough President, which is where we're located, so they're exposed to a lot of stuff that's happening at a local level, which is pretty cool for them, I think. So just to sort of sum up, you can see the program impact, but we've been doing it for 6 years. We've impacted or worked with 49 students. Some have come back and now work as mentors in our office. We've touched 12 CUNY schools across all 5 boroughs, and we have through this process, we've realized that, as we have these students working and responding to different research needs in our office, people have been coming, and so we ended up coming and asking for more assistance in researching using like maps and things. So we've created a way for people to submit data requests, and so the students will be tasked with, for instance, create a map that shows all the religious institutions across the city and where development is happening. That's one example. And as Noel mentioned, the civic innovations also contribute to our tool building. So they have helped build BoardStat, among other different tools like SLAM and things that we didn't get a chance to go through, but you can see. Another way that we engage communities is through community engagement events that we hold throughout the year. So we have 2 key events, one that's in the spring and one that's in the fall. In the spring, our event is School of Data, or perhaps Beta Fest, TBD, but it's around the Open Data Law, the Open Data Law's birthday. So it's on March 7th, and we use this as a way to engage the public and government, and we try to incorporate as many people as we can from across the city. So our goals for events are always to make sure that they're as diverse as possible, because often in a tech event, you'll get a lot of, as you can imagine, white tech bros. So we try to make it very inclusive and representative of what we think the world should look like in New York. and who should be making tools and contributing to government. So that is that. And then the other event we have is around National Day of Civic Hacking. This year we did a hackathon, and it was an interesting setup. The Department of Transportation asked us to help them bring together a community around OpenStreetMaps and help help update OpenStreetMaps with bicycle infrastructure data. And we used that as a way to then expand and say, hey, like, what if we look around at other data or like issues that involve mobility and accessibility for people of all different abilities? And what if we sort of try to identify different organizers who are already looking at this problem and bring together civic technologists and hackers who we're pretty like familiar with, and accomplished 8 different goals that people want to get done. So we were able to bring together 15 different community and government departments and work on 90 different participants and accomplish 8 projects in half a day, which is pretty fun. And there's a write-up. The last program I'm going to tell you about is how we engage public school teachers and middle school and high school students through a program called Hack League. So Hack League is a program that was developed through the Computer Science for All initiative that the Department of Education runs. And it is a way for teachers to engage students in computer science and civics. So it's interesting because it not only is engaging the students, but it's also introducing the teachers to New York City's open data platform through a professional development in the fall. And then it's asking the teachers to work with the students to identify an issue in their neighborhood or across the city through a human-centered design process, and then validate it through different tools using New York City's open data. And then the students compete in a borough-wide hackathon. So we hold 5 different hackathons in each borough. 5 hackathons, 1 per borough. And the students prototype a tool or some sort of solution that is addressing an issue that they've identified in their neighborhood that has to do with civics. So we'll bring in like the New York City Police Department if they're doing something that has to do with crime, or the health department if they're doing something that has to do with like health or something, which is kind of fun for them because they'll be like chatting with the police and the police are like, what is this? And then the last event is a final hackathon, and last year we held it at City Hall, which was pretty awesome. If you saw this picture, this is 150 students from all 5 boroughs sitting in, they've just worked for about 5 hours inside council chambers, building sort of prototype solutions and games and different things to civic issues. And what's also interesting is that we're not only exposing the students to government, but we're exposing the government to students. So we had about 17 different council members come by and explore the work that the students were doing. And they were sort of, many of them, just their minds were blown. They're like, we didn't know this was possible. How did they build this in like an hour? So it's a way for students to see what goes on in government, but for the government to really see like what is possible and where we should be. And just a note, remember, this boy could grow up in 4 years and become a community board member and really make an impact on his board. So last year, we worked across the city in 5 boroughs. We engaged with 100 different schools, 100 different teachers. We built a lot of different partnerships, and in total affected 1,500 students. And it was great because we got to involve people like Kelly Jin, the Chief Analytics Officer at the Mayor's Office for Open Data, the Mayor's Office for Data. And data analytics, yes. There's so many acronyms. And yeah, so essentially we incorporate, as Noel said, these 4 values in our work. And our goal is to constantly engage different communities that we see very important to this civic engagement mission that many of us, I think, here have. So that's it.
Okay, time for one question.
Super inspiring in New York. Are you seeing members and communities of other cities reaching out to replicate
Yeah, I can briefly answer that question. So is this thing on? Can you hear me? Yeah, okay, great. So in New York City, we're a member of the Code for America community. So we're part of the Brigade Network, which is like 80 cities across the United States that are working at various factions. We're actually on a 2.5-week road trip, just starting off with BrigadeCon and ending here in Madrid. And then internationally, there's also the Code for All network that I know that V-Taiwan is a member of, and it's great to be on a panel with our friends, our international friends and allies, and that's the Code for All community. And then there's a few other solidarity networks that exist, but those are really the two that are kind of engaged in this exact same practice. So Code for America Brigades and Code for All.
Okay, so thank you very much for your talk. And finally, Sanna from the Digidem Lab, she's going to present how to increase participation among those with least power. So, thank you very much. Tack så mycket.
Thank you. So I'm going to do the presentation in English, pero hablo español. Si no entienden algo, pueden hablar conmigo después. So I'm going to talk about how we at Digidem Lab in Sweden have worked to increase power amongst those that are the most marginalized in decision-making processes. And so Digidem Lab is a non-profit democracy lab based in Sweden. And what we do is that we study internationally acclaimed methods and platforms that actually work to increase participation, and then we implement them in Sweden. And the project I'm going to talk about is a project where we work with 4 city districts, 3 of them in Gothenburg and 1 in Stockholm, which are the 2 biggest cities in Sweden. And we have a couple of international collaborations as well, where we exchange knowledge with each other. And the purpose of the project is to increase participation in municipal decision-making for groups currently underrepresented in decision-making in Sweden, which are women, non-native Swedes, and young people. And this is according to a democracy investigation that they did 2014 in Sweden, where they realized that only 2% are active in political parties in Sweden. And today, currently in Sweden, that's the main way of participating, is to be in a political party. We don't really have a culture of participatory democracy. And where they see that that's a problem, because in the political parties, there's no young people, basically, and not a lot of non-native Swedes. So it's not representative at all. So that's a problem. And so what we do is that we work with a foundation of building trust, because without trust, you can't increase participation. And the principles that we work with are based on international principles. So it doesn't matter where you look, these principles are the same in order to increase trust and participation. So it's pretty much what a lot of people had said before, that citizens need to be involved early in the process, that the process needs to be transparent during all stages, and civil society and local organizations are important for outreach and to increase trust. Participatory democracy takes time, and the staff needs support and time to do what they're meant to do. And also that the decisions need to be binding and taken by the citizens themselves. So this is a base that we work with, and then I'm going to talk about other tactics that we work with as well, but without this, you can't really achieve increased participation. And so we work with a democracy model that we call the participation spiral, and it's a good way of being really transparent towards the citizens, but also towards the staff that are doing participatory processes, to know where are you in the process. Because you have to understand that the decision-making doesn't come until step 5. Before 5, a lot of things are happening. Someone is deciding on the issue, someone is deciding on the solutions. So for example, a lot of times in Sweden we have civil society members that are really disappointed, and also citizens, because the staff has already decided that this is what's important for you. An example is a poor district in Gothenburg, where they went on and put up a mosquito, which is a kind of machine that gives out a sound that makes young people feel nauseous. So if you're under the age of 26, you feel nauseous, as a way of getting young people away from the streets, because they thought that it was dangerous. But then if you actually ask the young people, they say that we don't have a youth center. We don't have anywhere to be. So where should we go? Should we just disappear from the surface of the earth? So you have to have citizens participating in the early stages as well. It's really important. And so besides working with these principles, we also work with methods that some of you have already talked about, which are well tested already. So participatory budgeting is one of them. And we have to remember the origin of participatory budgeting is from Porto Alegre, where it was one of the poorest neighborhoods in Brazil. And after doing participatory budgeting for years and years, they managed to change the way that resources were distributed in Porto Alegre because of the PB. And this is something we have to remember. If it's done right, then it's actually about distributing resources. And as Virgil mentioned in his talk, participatory budgeting is about something real. It's about money. So it's really good way to get people to participate. And what we do is we take a lot of inspiration from places that already do a lot when it comes to increasing participation among underrepresented groups. So for example, Paris, as been mentioned, is doing one of the biggest participatory budgets in the world. And they have a lot of methods to increase participation in poorer areas. As well as New York, they're doing a lot as well in doing a lot of community outreach in poor neighborhoods and migrant neighborhoods. So we take a lot of inspirations from them, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And an example is that in Paris, they actually allocate parts of the budget to poor neighborhoods, which is a very concrete way of giving resources. And in New York, something that they noticed was that a lot of groups that don't participate in the election, because they're not allowed to, can participate in the PB. For example, undocumented migrants, young people, and even people that have been in prison, because it's illegal to vote if you've been in prison. So it opens up participation as well. And something else that Paris and New York does is that they have community outreach staff to specifically reach out in poorer neighborhoods. And this is also very important. And these people are usually key organizations and people that already have foundation of trust and already know the problems of the area. So sometimes it's not enough to have government staff. You also have to have civil society working with you. So that's why we do a lot of training. So we train people in Sweden to do community outreach, because it's really important in order to reach out to underrepresented groups. I wanted to mention that last week I was elected into the Global PB Support Board, which is we're 20 people from all over the world that during 2 years we're going to work on creating resources to help people do participatory budgeting all over the world. So keep an eye out. We're going to put out more information that can help you if you're interested in doing PB. Another method that we work with, which has been mentioned, is citizen assemblies. So citizen assemblies, the purpose is representation. So it's not to have a majority decision, it's to actually have a representative decision. So that's also a good way of increasing representation amongst those that usually don't participate. And you randomly select people based on their demographics, which is really important because politicians, as I said, don't represent us. Usually they're older, usually they're men, usually they're white, so it's not representative. And that's why citizen assemblies is a good way of getting the opinion of people that don't really get to voice their opinions. So that's really important. And it's also based on research, on critical thinking. So you learn critical thinking and deliberations. And that's also important. So I'm going to move on, not talk so much about these. But what I can say is that both these methods are important to create a generation of young people who learn participation, who get used to participating, because we don't really have that. We grow up having other people deciding over us all the time. So this is important to create generations that can demand participation as well. And what I want to say about online platforms is, for us, there's a strategic way of anchoring participation. It's not a way to reach underrepresented groups. It's a way to make governments start working with participation. We work with both the Digidem and Council, and when we manage to tell a government that, wow, there's this cool digital tool that's like really innovative, we actually convince them of buying into something like a Trojan horse, and once they start using it, they kind of have to do participation, and then that's when we start doing the real type of participation, like going out, teaching community outreach. So for us, it's more of a strategic tool. It's not really an effective way of specifically reaching underrepresented groups, because it's all about trust, and they're not going to use your platform if they don't trust you. But something that you can do if you use digital tools and platforms is to actually test them on the people that you want to reach. So we've done user testings of Console, for example, on underrepresented groups, where they got to test them and react and describe what they felt when they were using the platforms. And we invited young people, non-native Swedes and women to test them. Here is me, for example, asking questions about the platform. And half of the group didn't know anything about the platform. They just got straight into just using it. And the other group, we told about the 15M movement and the background of Console and Digidem. And what we saw was that the people, the group that knew about the history of the 15M movement were more willing to use the platform. This, I think, is because among people that have a history of oppression and racism, there's a lot of despair, there's a lot of misery. So that's why it's really important to keep reminding them of positive examples of politics that actually works. So we talk a lot about other countries. We talk a lot about the 15M movement in Sweden to inspire young people to understand that there's another future out there. So it's really important. And of course, if you want to increase participation amongst underrepresented group, you have to plan for community involvement. So I'm going to give you examples of how we do that with two of our partners. So we work with a city district in Stockholm called Skärholmen, and they're using Digidem. We installed Digidem recently, and they're going to do a process next year, and we're going to design their process in Digidem. The other example is a housing company based in Gothenburg. It's based in a poor neighborhood where the majority are migrants or have migrant backgrounds. And they're using a method from Paris that was mentioned before. They're doing participatory budgeting with tenants in social housing companies. So we've taken the inspiration from Barcelona and Paris and implemented it in Sweden. And what we're doing is basically helping them to plan for how can we reach those groups that don't usually participate. And we do that by mapping. We map associations, meeting points, institutions, and people that actually manage to reach those people, that actually has the trust of those people. So for example, a lot of local community already exists. You don't have to reinvent it. You already have a lot of associations that are doing important stuff, as well as key people who have a lot of contacts and trust. So we map them out so that the staff has maps of these people. And then we do, to get, for each association and each key person, we analyze what do they get out of participating. Because you can't just come up to the person and say, come and participate in this PB. You have to ask them and listen to them. What are your needs and how can we meet your needs through participating and through collaborating so that they feel like their needs are met. So we do that. And after we do that, we make a schedule of when are they going to meet these people, what are they going to say, and etc. So that's concrete what we do when we plan for community involvement. And one of the most important aspects is to listen. Listen to people. They're going to be really frustrated because usually if you haven't been listened to before, you just want to scream and just let them scream at you as much as they want until something concrete comes out. But because after a while, they're gonna stop talking, and you can ask them, and you will come up with something together. So that's really important. And lastly, something that we noticed when we were doing workshops was that a lot of people that are working with participatory budgeting or other types of process has never participated in a participatory budget as a citizen or as a community member. I haven't, for example, and I'm working with convincing people to participate, but I haven't participated. So once you actually ask yourself, what would motivate me to participate, or my mother, or my child, you're actually thinking of a concrete person and not just this like illusion of some sort of like citizen groups that are really excited about something they've never heard of. So that actually makes you think about how can I create a safe environment. And so here's a picture from when we were doing that exercise with a city district. And we were asking them what would motivate them to participate, and we put it up on Post-its. And they actually came up with a lot of things that they wouldn't have thought of otherwise. Because they were thinking like, oh, this is great, everyone will participate. But when they actually thought, what would make me participate? They thought of like, oh, I have a child, so it can't be at this time, or I have to have childcare, or yeah, you know, those normal things that affects you in your everyday life. And here's another picture. So, in conclusion, what I've said, all of these things that you need in order to increase participation among underrepresented groups. So, firstly, use these basic principles for transparency that I was showing you before. And they're important as a base to build trust, because without trust, you can't make people participate, because there's a history there of oppression, of not being listened to. So that's important. And also, methods such as PB and citizen assemblies are important because they've been tested all over the place for many, many years. And if they're done right, they can increase participation. And you don't have to redo it. There's a lot of resources that you can use out there. You can talk to me afterwards, and I can send you links or anything that you want. And also, employ people to work with community outreach. Don't do it yourself if you're working for the city, because probably they're not going to listen to you. They're going to listen to someone that they recognize, someone from their own community. And also, when you're using platforms, don't expect underrepresented groups to show up in the platform. Instead, think of a platform, as I said, as a way of anchoring participation, to convince cities to start doing participation. And then once you've convinced them, then you can start talking about all of these things, about trust, about the importance of doing all of these other things. Maybe since we're in Barcelona, I don't know if you understand how much inspiration you've given us in Sweden. We talk about you constantly at every workshop we give. We talk about the 15M movement. And sometimes when you're in it yourself, you don't realize how important it is to inspire, to talk about these positive examples. Even if it's been hard, even if it's been challenging, remind the people, remind the young people, remind the migrants that there are positive examples out there. And the future isn't just this dark place where everyone's gonna die, you know. And then create plans for community involvement, like the ones I showed you. I can send you, if you're interested, the presentations or the pictures that I was using, so that you can try the methods yourself. It's a really great way of planning. And lastly, go back to your own experience. As I was saying, think as a citizen and not as a staff or an employee. That makes a huge difference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sanna. So, any question to Sanna? Let's go.
Hi. I would like to know how do you think or how you manage when you, for example, this process with the people that are not participate a lot or never. Sometimes these people have a really short-term needs, and sometimes this process are really in a long term. So I don't know if you what are the strategies to manage the frustration or the willing of the people that want a real action or an action in a short term. I don't know, because I think it's hard, no? If you want to listen everyone, this must have time. So sometimes these people don't have any time, or they generate a bit of frustration. So how do you manage? Thanks.
Should I answer directly or yes? So one example is that there's a lot of places that use, like in New York, for example, or in Canada, where they've done participatory budgeting in housing companies. They use representatives. So like the citizens or the tenants, they elect people that are interested in putting in more time, and the others can just participate as much as they want. So you don't have to like participate in the whole process. So for example, if it's a PB, maybe you just put in your proposal, and then the representative has a responsibility to better the proposal and put in more time, but you've already given your idea. And then afterwards, when the proposals have been finished by the people that have more time, they present them back to the citizens that have less time. So sometimes you don't have to think that it has to be the same for all citizens. So you can have different roles based on how much time they have.
Okay, so now we have time to make any kind of question to start a debate. So if there is any doubt or any comment you want to reflect, otherwise I have prepared some questions according to what we have been presented, but this is an event about participation, so we expect people to participate somehow. Okay, otherwise I will start with just an initial question. Like what we have seen today, or in this panel, it's like different ways on how institutions connect to civil society, or how initiatives from the civil society connect to institutions, like in the case of Paula, the institution to the civil society, for the other cases, the other way around. And I think one of the interesting issues about using technology and using these innovative ways of using data is how we can transform policies, how we can transform our territories, and how we can transform the reality. But also it's quite relevant how we can transform through these new technologies the way we transform. And this is essentially the idea of meta-Digidem. Like we not only want to decide, but we also want to decide the way how we decide. We want to develop new methodologies, new manners to get involved. And I feel like a common aspect among the 4 presentations in terms of community was building trust. Like, I think the 5th of you really emphasized that aspect. But in terms of technology, there were some mentions to agile, or some direct mentions or some indirect mentions, like the definition of personas, the importance of user test. But I feel like by definitions, institutions are not agile. So a very important way of how to transform these institutions is how we make these institutions more agile, at the same time how we can do that in a way that is respectful with the goals and respectful with the underrepresented groups as well in this kind of process. So how is the way that you consider we can really transform the way institutions operate according to the much more agile way society is performed?
Do I need to turn this on? No. Well, I know in New York, not that it's happening at a scaled level, but I think if you have some sort of team doing a little bit inside of an institution and showing others that they're doing it, exposing it, that's one sort of way that's I'm beginning to see more of. And then the other thing that we're very focused on is making sure that whoever is going to be in those institutions in the future are familiar with those processes now. So students, teachers, equipping the next like influx of talent.
I maybe can talk a little bit about the trust issue related to politicians. Because we do have in France, and I think it's global, like a mistrust against elected representatives and against representative democracy. And what we are trying to do is letting people see themselves in these positions of power and giving them the possibility to reach the positions of power. So really disintermediate, not having to go through parties. That's the idea of the, how do you say sorteo in English?
Sortition.
Sorry?
Sortition.
Sortition. The sortition in the election. And it's the idea of having more and more assemblies with citizens that have been sorted. Sorry. But it's really impressive how in France we have this aggressivity that is building, and it becomes physical violence. We had during the summer people attacking MPs' offices, and it's really building up. And so we really believe we need to experiment new ways and of democracy that can complement representative democracy, so direct democracy, deliberative democracy, liquid democracy, and we need to give them a real shot, a real chance, and maybe have these positives like in parallel and start seeing and comparing which does best in terms of trust and in terms of results, in terms of impacts. So yeah, that's what we're trying to do.
So depending on if it's the citizens or the institution itself, I think that when it comes to the citizens, it's important to remember that we have different cultures around the world, and you have to adapt the participation based on the actual culture of your country. So in Sweden, for example, we're not like as social as the Spanish people, and it's I mean it's cold, so we don't really hang out in the square. I don't see a 15M mobilization happening in Sweden, but we do have a lot of sport and health associations. We do have a lot of church associations. So to basically build on what you already have, I think is really important when it comes to building democracy among citizens. And then when it comes to the institutions, I think it's important because I work with civil servants, and they're usually really frustrated because they're the only person that understands participation, and then all of their coworkers are so uninterested. So it's really important to make the whole institution understand that it's a part of their job. So like working it into the documents that they are doing and not seeing it as extra time, that it's something additional. No, it's like the way you're supposed to work, and to be really understanding that it's a change of culture and to work with them and not against them, I think is really important.
Oh. Okay, so as for institution, I want to add is that from my experience working with public servants, it's very important is to change the management system, like how they get their grade of being a public servant, how the public procurement is, like the contract is signed. If like we want to do agile, but the government contract doesn't allow the room of that, it's also very hard for anyone who wants to do that. So personally, I'm looking for like 18F, they actually have some template for agile procurement to support the federal government to procure the kind of project.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. I had bad news, and I was told that we have no more time for questions, but there are good news that there are drinks and snacks outside, so we can continue the debate outside and networking. And we also have great news that we have an entire full day tomorrow of the Digidem Fest, so I hope to see you tomorrow. And again, thank you very much for the presentation.
I'll take it.